1 year later, a chance for Boston to look back at the day that changed everything and a chance to look forward to race day and a proper finish this year. On the brink, Ukraine's military has entered the fight against that pro-Russian uprising. It's not over. You may think the seasons have changed and spring is here. You may have even planted a garden. The temperatures are about to plunge and snow is coming in some spots. And what is it about Google glasses that make people want to attack those wearing them? Is that any way to behave? Nightly News begins now.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams.
Good evening. On this night, exactly 1 year ago, there were only theories, along with the crushing news of the staggering number of wounded and dead after an American institution had been attacked that day. Today, in Boston, they observed a moment of silence at 2:49 p.m. At the same moment, the president bowed his head in the Oval Office. The numbers are still staggering. A year later, 3 dead, 260 wounded, 16 people lost limbs. It led to the eventual shutdown of Boston for a time, the death of one suspect, the capture of another. Today there was time to look back. Tonight, however, Boston is looking forward to Patriots Day on Monday, the marathon, and a proper finish to what was started last year. We begin here tonight with NBC's Ann Thompson in Boston. Ann, good evening.
Good evening, Brian. This was a day for gratitude, not recriminations, for giving thanks for the superhuman efforts that saved so many lives, and remembering the 3 that were lost here. In Boston today, you could not escape the rain or the sadness. But even through its tears, Boston showed resilience is the best revenge. At an invitation-only tribute, survivors of the bombing stood to praise the city. Patrick Downs and his wife Jessica, newlyweds a year ago, each lost a leg.
We chose to love, and that has made all the difference.
Adrienne Hazlitt Davis, a dancer, lost her foot.
No milestone is too small to celebrate. Even walking into a non-handicapped bathroom stall for the first time doing a happy dance.
Teenager David Yepes still has hearing loss.
You have touched our hearts in a way that many times our gratitude could only be expressed through our tears of joy.
The crowd applauded the first responders, the doctors and nurses, and rose for the city's former mayor, Tom Menino, who made this promise.
When lights are dim, the cameras go away. Know that our support and love for you will never waver.
Vice President Joe Biden brought them to their feet again with a rallying cry.
We are Boston. We are America. We respond. We endure. We overcome. And we own the finish line.
The day began near that finish line where the families of those who died laid wreaths, including 8-year-old Jane Richard, walking on a new leg. Here, Crystal Campbell, Lindsay Liu, and Martin Richard lost their lives. This afternoon, the families came back again, joined by thousands for a moment of silence at 2:49 when the first bomb went off. The day's events happened under extraordinary and visible security, one of the many things that is different now. Yet the marathon endures, stepping off next Monday, the final 26.2 miles in a difficult year.
Now today, many people tried to define what's become the city's motto, Boston Strong. Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick said in the end, it's a triumph of community, of people who turned to each other when they easily could have turned on each other. Brian?
Ann Thompson starting us off from Boston tonight. Ann, thanks. And as for the man accused of carrying out these attacks along with his deceased brother, his lawyers and the government are preparing for his trial this fall. And the prosecution has indicated that it will seek the death sentence if he is convicted. We get more tonight from our justice correspondent, Pete Williams.
The lawyers brought in to defend Johar Sarnaia face 2 big decisions. The first, whether to seek a change of venue in hopes of avoiding the death penalty. Moving the trial out of the Boston courthouse, which is just under 2 miles from last year's marathon finish line, would get away from the city traumatized by the attack. But one poll showed a majority of Boston residents oppose the death penalty for Sarnaia, so a change of venue might not be to his advantage. His lawyers must also decide whether to urge him to plead guilty if the government would agree not to seek the death penalty. He's now 20, held without bail at a federal medical prison. And in recent court filings, his lawyers have signaled that they'll make his age an issue. At the time of the bombing, they say, his older brother, Tamerlan, was 26 and he was 19. They say Tamerlan Tsarnaev had a substantially longer and deeper engagement than his younger brother with extremist and violent ideology.
They are trying to preview some sort of a defense for him that limits his culpability for what occurred.
That legal strategy saved Levoyd Malvo from the death penalty. He was 17 when he and another man carried out the Washington, D.C. sniper shootings 12 years ago. The government insists it has strong evidence in the Boston case. Photos of Johar Tsarnaev with his brother carrying backpacks along the marathon route, and video of the younger Tsarnaev appearing to set his backpack down, then walk away at the spot where the second bomb went off.
Since Monday's bombings,
Retired FBI agent Richard Delorier, who led the investigation, says finding that video was the key.
I knew, and my Joint Terrorism Task Force agency heads, when they saw the video shortly after I did, we knew we had the video image of at least one of the bombers.
Prosecutors have filed 18 separate counts for the 4 murders it committed. Tsarnaev's lawyers say that's unfair duplication. They'll be in court tomorrow, Brian, asking the judge to throw some of those charges out.
Pete Williams, and our thanks to you for your cautious and accurate reporting going all the way back to a year ago tonight on this story. Thanks to you for being here in New York with us tonight. Near Kansas City, Kansas, today, the first court appearance for the man being held in the killings of 3 people outside that Jewish community center and retirement home on the eve of Passover. Fraser Glenn Cross, a white supremacist who yelled Heil Hitler at camera crews on Sunday after the shooting, was charged with 1 count of capital murder, which carries the death penalty, and a separate first-degree murder charge. Now to news from overseas. Over the past few weeks, Russia and Ukraine have been engaged in a kind of slow-motion conflict. The Russians are strongly suspected of being behind this building-by-building, town-by-town struggle for hearts and minds and real estate of Ukrainians who live in the eastern part of the country, where many of them speak Russian and identify themselves as Russian. Ukraine has been vowing and warning to take a stand, and now it appears that they have. And NBC's Jim Maseda is there for us tonight.
Today, very carefully, Ukraine's military fought back. It mobilized helicopters, tanks, armored personnel carriers, and Ukrainian special forces, and they retook a small airfield at Kramatorsk in eastern Ukraine, which had been seized last week by pro-Russian militants. It was a risk. Russian President Vladimir Putin had warned Ukraine's new government not to use force against the protesters, raising fears Russia will invade if violence does break out. But with protesters seizing one government building after another in as many as a dozen towns in eastern Ukraine, some say with plenty of Russian help, Ukraine's acting president felt he had to act. Responsibly and cautiously, he said, to protect citizens, stop terror, and stop attempts to tear the country apart. Ukrainian forces have been mobilized, but so far they have not retaken any of those occupied buildings. And angry protesters make it clear they aren't leaving. Here in Donetsk, the barricades grow larger, the protesters more defiant. Sergei Gravelin, the teacher, said he feared civil war was about to begin.
We do not want to die, like every normal people. But what we can do in this situation?
This is really where it all began about 10 days ago. This building was one of the first to be occupied by pro-Russian protesters. Tonight, the barricades have been reinforced. People are singing songs, bracing themselves, because they fear that tonight is when there could be an attack by Ukrainian police. The battle lines are drawn, and this could be the calm before a very dangerous storm. Jim Maseda, NBC News, Donetsk.
For a second day today, a small robotic submarine was launched deep in the Indian Ocean to search for any sign of that missing Malaysian jetliner on the sea floor off the Australian coast. We get the latest tonight from NBC's Katie Tur in Perth. Katie, good evening.
Hey there, Brian. Not a promising start to what could be their last best effort. Bluefin 21 is back in the water today, but its first mission was aborted after only 6 hours. 6 hours into what should have been a 16-hour scan as it reached a depth that was beyond its operating capabilities. Now it's back on Ocean Shield. Once it was back on, they bring back up to the surface. Brian?
Katie Tur, Perth, Australia for us tonight. Katie, thanks. In South Africa today, Oscar Pistorius finished his testimony after 5 days of very tough, at times brutal, questioning by the prosecutor in his murder trial. As the defense now begins its case, the question here is how much damage has been done to the former Olympic star's story that he shot and killed his girlfriend by accident. NBC's Mike Taibbi has been watching it all from inside the courtroom in Pretoria.
Oscar Pistorius ended his marathon turn on the stand by repeating his main defense to his own lawyer.
Did you consciously pull the trigger or not?
I didn't think about putting the trigger.
Killing girlfriend Reva Steenkamp was an accident, he insisted. He thought there was an intruder. But he stumbled often under 5 days of withering cross-examination by prosecutor Harry Nell, who seemed contemptuous of Pistorius' claim that the shooting was a mistake.
Say it then. Say yes. I shot and killed Reva Steenkamp.
Nell was relentless, driving Pistorius to repeated emotional meltdowns that stopped the proceedings.
I did not fire at Reva.
Nell, nicknamed the Pitbull, tore holes in Pistorius' story, getting him to admit that some key elements had changed, all but calling him a liar.
I say you've got a concocted version. That's because you never said it.
I think that you're trying to cover up for lies.
At one point, Nell shocked the court by showing a graphic photo of Steenkamp's body.
It's time that you look at it.
I don't have to look at a picture. I was there.
Nell has had a couple of missteps in tone and language, hammering at Pistorius in the witness box just 6 feet away. But has he gotten where he needs to go?
He put it to Oscar that his version is improbable, it is near impossible, and that he caught him out with various dishonesties and lies that he told during cross-examinations.
Nell did get Pistorius to admit he aimed his gun at the locked bathroom door, and in the absence of an imminent threat, pulled the trigger 4 times. An accident in his version that the judge may decide was murder. Today, Pistorius had the last word. During questioning by his own lawyer, the former track star read a Valentine's Day card that Reva had given him just hours before he shot her to death.
She wrote, I think today is a good day to tell you that. And then it says, I love you.
The trial is expected to go another month. Mike Taibbi, NBC News, Pretoria, South Africa.
Back home in this country, the weather is making news again tonight. So many people, especially east of the Mississippi, just finished planting seeds, preparing the garden perhaps for the season to come. Now in come temperatures in the 20s as far south as Nashville, and snow further north. 3 inches in Detroit this morning was enough to set a final record for this season. Just 3 inches of snow. Let's bring in meteorologist Janice Huff, who's in the weather studio tonight with details. Janice, good evening.
Hi there, Brian. Even in New York City, there'll be a bit of light snow in the next few hours. The temperatures will be dropping fast across the Northeast, and a lot of people already put away their winter weather gear. You'll have to dig it back out once again, even though the snow is going to be light. The freeze warning stretched from New York City all the way down to parts of Alabama and Mississippi, Montgomery, Natchez, Jackson. Your temperatures will drop to 32 or below tonight within this entire region. And if you've already put your plants out, then you've got to protect them now. 32 degrees in Nashville by 11 o'clock tonight. Tomorrow morning at 6 a.m., it's in the 20s there, Louisville, Indianapolis, Washington, D.C., and 32 degrees in New York City. Winter makes an appearance once again this spring, Brian.
Unbelievable. Just when you thought it was over. Janice Huff, our meteorologist tonight. Janice.